Can I know, maybe before we start, who of you knows a little bit about cryptocurrencies? Okay. Who knows a little bit about blockchain? Who knows the difference between blockchain and cryptocurrencies? Okay. Okay, who knows the difference between Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency? Okay, some of you. Very interesting. Okay, so if I speak too fast, then let me know. I have a tendency to speak really fast because then I get more stuff into the same time. So just let me know. Quickly, let me tell you where I come from, how I ended up here, and then really get into the topic. I don't want to talk much about my company today, 10x, that we have here in Singapore. I really want to talk about the general topic, but so that you have some kind of context. I'm originally from Innsbruck in Austria. I moved to Singapore end of 2015, beginning of 2016. I learned about all this 2014, so around 4.5 years ago. Back then, I was still a medical doctor, and I actually had no interest to get into the finance space. How I ended up in finance was I always wanted to solve the problem in medicine, how to store medical data without having to trust the company. So if you think about it, it would be great to store medical data, but it's awful to having to trust the company, because if this company gets hacked, all your medical data are hacked. So there's no real good problem to this. And in 2014, I found out about blockchain and how to solve this problem, and it would be a fantastic solution. And I'm going to talk about the solution also today. But I tried to start a startup in 2014 around this problem. I couldn't do it. I couldn't convince anyone to give me money for this or to help me on this. It was just impossible 4.5 years ago. So a year later, I talked to my friends Toby and Paul, and they say, hey, you know what? We're flying to Singapore because there's a DBS hackathon where we could pitch a blockchain idea, and if we win, we get $15,000, and we can use all the facilities for 3 months. So I say, you know, let's pitch my medical blockchain idea. And they said, no, no one wants this. We're going to pitch a debit card that people can use to spend Bitcoin. And I was not 100% convinced of Bitcoin back then. So I said, I'm not sure if this is the great idea, but because they were 2 and I was 1, they kind of outvoted me. And so we flew here, and in May 2015, we pitched to an entire panel our idea of making Bitcoin spendable with a debit card. So you could connect the debit card with Bitcoin, and then you can go into any store and you can spend your Bitcoin. And we won. 3.5 years ago, we won. We got our $15,000, and that's how, back then the company was called 1Bit, because for Bitcoin, Bitcoin was the only sheriff in town. And then that's how everything got started. There was just a couple of us, and then we started growing. In 2016, we had our first external investments. And then actually from the ICH group, I don't know if you know Danny Toe from the ICH group. He was our very first investor here. And then in 2016, we pitched at PayPal, and we won the competition. And we were one of the first 3 startups at PayPal to be incubated by PayPal. And so for an entire year, we were in Suntech from mid-2016 until 2017, working and building on the company. We renamed to 10x because we didn't want to grow 1 bit at a time. We wanted to 10x everything, be faster. And so that's how all this got started. And so now then we moved into a home office. We had 20 people working from our house. It was this typical Silicon Valley startup kind of thing. We slept on the top floor, and our office was in the middle and in the bottom. And at some point, this house got too small. And so a year ago, we moved into Clarke Quay Central. If you are at Boat Quay or something, you can look up. We have huge letters of 10x inside of our room. We're not allowed to put anything outside of the office. And all the banks have their signs there. So we thought, okay, we need to be the pirates. And so we put our sign 10x there. So if you're ever in Boat Quay, then just look up at night after 7 p.m. the lights go on. And then you should see our little logo there. And if you ever want to visit us, then please drop by. Our office is always open. Eric, who is not here today, Eric Gerber, he has the office a few floors under us. He always comes up for a coffee when he's in Singapore and has a chat how it's going. We're now approximately 90 people here of the co-founders. Me and Toby are Austrian. Paul is Thai. And then we actually don't have that many Austrians or Germans working in the company. We have a few, but we do have a lot of locals. And then we have a lot of engineers from all over the place. I think we're like 40, 50 people. Some are from the US and whatnot. Aside of building 10x, it's been a real big passion of mine, what I call to make people crypto fit. Fit for cryptocurrency, for decentralization. And that's how, around 1.5 years ago, I wrote this book that you guys have, Cryptocurrencies Explained Simply. We've sold over 100,000 of these books all around the world. It's been translated in 15 languages. There's a second book that just came out called Blockchain 2.0, more than just Bitcoin. I don't have it here yet because it literally just came out. I'm gonna take a few examples out of this book. And so that's what I want to talk to you today about what blockchain actually is, what this fascination is, and how all this works. So if you want, you can try out our app. That's our 10x app. You can download it on Google Play and on the App Store. You can order our debit card if you want to. And that's the latest book, Blockchain 2.0. It's been on Spiegel #1 and on Amazon #1. People really love this topic and they really care about that. And they're really interested. And I think, obviously, just like you, it's something that is going to change something fundamental. And that is something that I think is really in the heart of ours. It is a quote that is from 2015, and it's from the World Economic Forum. And they're saying, 10 years later, so 2025, 10% of the global GDP will be stored on distributed ledgers. And when I heard this quote for the first time, I kind of grabbed what this could mean. But there's so many people who don't even understand what does this mean. To me, this makes no sense. It's the same as if in the 1990s, someone would have told you, 20 years later, everything will happen online. And in the 1990s, people just didn't care. But those people, those companies, those governments that did care in the 1990s are the winners today. Because we have to face it, who didn't bet on the online world in the last 20 years, bet on the wrong horse. And you want to bet on the right horse. And I promise you one thing. The companies, the individuals, the governments who are betting on blockchain over the next 20 years are going to be the winners. And it's going to be difficult to tell you today which application of blockchain is going to be the winner, just like it's impossible to say in the 1990s which internet application was the winner. Yes, today we know it's Amazon and it's Google and it's Facebook and so on, but in the 1990s this was impossible to say. But if you have the right fundamentals and you understand the basics, you might have a good hand in picking the right winners. And you might be able to transform your business, revolutionize a business, have success as an investor, or just understand the world maybe a bit better. So let's talk a bit about what does this actually mean. Let's get the fundamentals right. And then we can dive into these individual applications. I'm going to work through this in 5 layers really quick. We're going to go all the way from what does trust and consensus mean, all the way down to examples such as Bitcoin. And hopefully, like the questions asked at the beginning, what is a blockchain, what is a cryptocurrency, what's Bitcoin? Hopefully all of you are going to be able to just simply answer that to yourself or to friends afterwards. And when you read this in the press, you can say, oh, that's bullshit, that's just not true. Or, oh yeah, right, this is completely correct. So let's dive in, level 1, consensus. I don't know if any one of you has read this book, 1984 from George Orwell. It's a must read in our company. Everyone has to read this. Because if you understand this book, you understand the need for a system where no one can dominate consensus. Consensus is what happened and what didn't happen. It's an agreement over something. And in this book, it's pretty an interesting concept. The present dictates the past, which is weird because you think the past is written. But here it becomes clear it's not. And because you can dictate the present and the past, you control the future. And this is a very powerful concept, and it works because it's a totalitarian, dystopian environment. And hopefully we will never experience something like this. But it begs for a question, why does everything have to be centralized? Why is there always one company, one institution, one person in charge that dictates over everything else? Why could it not be decentralized? Why could not be everyone in charge at the same time? Well, it's very simple. If I take a glass of water, and it's in the physical world, and I go behind a wall and I come back, you can be pretty sure that I still have a glass of water. I didn't destroy it, because otherwise I wouldn't have a glass of water anymore, and it's pretty sure I didn't create a glass of water out of new. Because in the real world, it's really, really difficult to create, change, and destroy. And it's clear to everyone. But what about the digital world? In the digital world, I can take a picture with my phone. It costs nothing. I can edit this picture. Costs nothing. I can delete the picture. Costs nothing. As soon as we talk about digital information, decentralization is thought to be impossible. Because if I go on my phone and I say, let me type in the money I own. So I type in, let's say, $100. Okay, but I can just change this number. I can say I own $200. If there's no central party, the bank, making sure that I don't change my number, how are you sure that I don't cheat in a system where no one is in charge? And everyone thought in the digital world, this is just not possible to have a decentralized system. Until 2008. In 2008, a group, no one really knows who, called Satoshi Nakamoto, defined a file system that would allow a decentralized storage of information. And decentralized just means no one is in charge. And what they proposed was revolutionary. They said, everyone that wants to be part of a community that's not centralized, that's decentralized, stores information in time blocks or content blocks. And they update their digital file in content blocks or in time blocks. And whenever something new happens in a community, I update this ledger, this digital file. And I add new information, and new information, and new information, and new information. And through cryptography, all this data input gets linked. So if we are here, and let's say this is now, the past cannot be changed, because if I change the past, the entire chain falls apart, because the time blocks are linked together through cryptography. And that's how this name of a blockchain came alive. A blockchain is nothing else than a digital file that everyone stores, that stores the information of everyone in the group. There's different versions of this that came afterwards, such as the Tangle or Hashgraph, but they all are based on the same concept that got started in 2008 and had the first update ever on January 4th, 2009, so approximately 10 years ago. And it was the Bitcoin blockchain. So all this does is a blockchain stores information. And now the question is, what kind of information? And in the case of finance, it stores cryptocurrencies. So it stores how much cryptocurrency does everyone part of a community own. And if one person sends cryptocurrency to another person, everyone in the community updates their ledger, their digital file. Now what this allows me to do is, I can look at my blockchain, let's say of Bitcoin, there's different blockchains for every cryptocurrency, and I can verify, does a person really have this money? Yes or no, because I can see it. I don't have to trust the bank. I don't need to ask a bank to transfer money. I can send money to anyone. It's completely censorship resistant. But if I talk about other applications, and that's where it gets really exciting, we can store so many new things on this decentralized ledger, censorship resistant, completely open for anyone to join, and completely transparent. It would revolutionize a lot of businesses in ways that most people don't think about it. We spoke before about notary businesses. A notary is such a weird business model if you think about it. I have to go somewhere to have something stamped. Why? So I can show this to someone else, somewhere else, that I actually have this. On a blockchain, this could be revolutionized, because I could just go somewhere, scan this picture, upload it, it gets unique through a so-called hashing cryptography, and everyone around the world, if I send them the hash, can verify that this is the same picture. Now, if you think this is future talk, there's companies all around the world who are implementing this already. So if you are in a notary business, you should look at this, because it's not going to take long, and this is done. Another problem, CVs, any kind of certificates from universities and so on. There's universities all around the world. How it works is, they have a blockchain. If you get a certificate, I graduated on this day, these are my grades and so on, it gets hashed, cryptographically secure, uploaded, and the hash is created on the blockchain. Everyone sees the same hash. It's anonymous, so no one knows who this is or what it is. But now what you can do is, if you come and you say you want to work for 10x, I'm not going to ask you, can you give me your CV? I'm going to ask you, give me your hash. Because you could cheat on your CV. Your CV could be tempered. You can adjust it, you can delete stuff, you can add stuff, you can fake it. But if I get the hash from your university and I can verify that this is from your university, I see exactly what's happening. Completely trustless. There's universities all around the world already working on this. There's exciting tools like smart contracts. Obviously, we have the currencies. I'm not that excited on currencies itself. There's a lot of stuff on record keeping, and then obviously the security part. And security part can also be very interesting. If I talk about a land registry, about record keeping, about real estate, at the moment, if I buy real estate, and I don't know the fees in Singapore, I've never bought real estate in Singapore, but I've bought real estate in many, many countries all around the world. I have fees from 5 to 10%. And some are just registration fees, some are stamp duties, and so on and so on and so on and so on. If I would suddenly digitalize that and make it completely open and trustless, fees could go down to 0.00001%. That's insane. It's what an advantage. Now, you always have the same. You have two groups then. When you hear this, and it's always with new innovation, you have those who scream and those who are against innovation. And you always have this. But then you have those who are just as scared, but they embrace it. And they take it and they're like, wow, let me work with this, let me run with this. Let me see what is possible. And this is just like with offline and online. I want to grab out a few of those examples and then, on the one hand, talk a bit about the upsides and the strengths, and then make fun of some and maybe show out some mishaps that have happened already in the past couple of years, because there's enough, and you will see, and they are hilarious. So the example that got me into blockchain is storing data. It came from a lot of ideas. On the one hand, if let's say I do a genetic test, and genetic tests are becoming very, very popular. They are a predictor of a lot of things, so if I can have a lot of early diagnosis for certain risks, it helps a lot, and genetic tests are very powerful. So I don't know if you've heard about this case in the US. I think it's called the Golden Gate Bridge Killer, or the Golden Gate Killer or something, where someone killed someone, I think 40 years ago. And in this case, it was really good that he got found, but think about what this could mean for you. So this guy killed someone, a policeman killed someone 40 years ago, and relatives, far distant relatives of this person, did genetic tests. Not this person, genetic tests, other people. But because the data is accessible, the police could retrace who this person was. And they could pin it down to like 3 or 4 people. And so all they had to do was watch those people, get actual DNA samples, and they knew exactly who the person was. Now in this case, it was good that this was possible. But now think about the opposite. Think about 8 of your distant relatives go for a genetic test. Not you, 8 other people. And they have some kind of risk for a disease. 8 distant relatives, not you. But now the insurance company figures this out and says, hey, listen, based on these 8 tests from people that you don't know went to the doctor, you don't even know who they are, I'm just raising your premium double. Because based on this, the risk of you having some problem is insanely high. And if you think this is not going to happen, I promise you it's going to happen. Because this is business. And this is the problem of storing data and not being able to store data in an efficient manner. And so when I was a surgeon in Innsbruck in Austria, we had a different problem. We had patients come in, and I knew nothing about these people, and some people couldn't even talk. So I had to do every single test from the ground up. And this just drives you crazy. So what is it that you do? You have to do it. Wouldn't there be a better way to store the information on a centralized database? Yeah, but no one wants to do this, because what happens if this database gets hacked? All your medical data that you can't change is out there. In a blockchain, no one controls your data. You control your data. No one else does, because there's no central server that can get hacked. And that's what got me into blockchain in 2014 on this mission of kind of revolutionizing medicine. And I failed back then. It was very, very early, and the reason, and I think it's still too early for this use case, is the following. How does a human interact with a machine? And in the case of a blockchain, I cannot have another human on the other side, because as soon as there's a human, there's censorship resistance. There is no open source anymore. A human can dictate yes or no. And so this connection between human and machine is still not solved. It's similar to when in the internet times, the very early delivery companies like pets.com didn't fail because of their product. They failed because of missing online payment services. They failed because of fast logistics. And that's what made Amazon so successful at the end, because they kind of solved these problems. And it's similar right now. The reason this didn't work was not because of the idea. The idea is genius. And I think someone will solve it, probably not today, but probably in 10 years. and it's going to be super, super successful. But it needs a few other steps at the moment. Now, obviously, Bitcoin is something that many of you have heard. It's just one of the examples of cryptocurrencies. And one of the examples, because it's just defined on what the community agrees on. The community agrees, hey, we're going to have up to 21 million Bitcoins. That's the maximum we're going to have. We don't have more. These are just rules. Then you have Litecoin, who in 2011 said, screw that, I don't want to have 21 million Bitcoins, I want 4 times this many. So I want 84 million coins, and they called it Litecoin. So all these different coins that you hear are just versions of rules of regulations, or how often can you update. Bitcoin says, I don't allow more updates than around 10 updates a second. I don't allow more updates. And some coins say, no, this is not enough, we need more updates. We want 100 updates a second. Now, with that comes cost, because you need to store more data, you need to have faster internet, right? So everything has like advantages and drawbacks. And so all these different coins just have different regulations or rules. So if you ever hear about this new coin, don't get tricked. It's just a different algorithm. It's just a different rule book that all these people play by. The largest one is Bitcoin. And then you have Ethereum, and you have so many other kind of these rules. And I want to grab a few out. Before we do this, let's kind of remind ourselves of one thing. What's the problem that a blockchain actually solves? This is really, really important. If something doesn't solve anything, then it doesn't have a place to be. And a blockchain solves trust in a way that you couldn't solve it anywhere else. I'm going to tell you a fun story, and it's a story that I was told myself. I haven't experienced it myself, but I can completely understand where this person is coming from. And even though maybe the story is not the best example, I'm not changing the example because I still think it makes the point. And it happened to I don't do these events in such a small setup. Normally, I either do consulting for large banks or for large consultancy companies, or I do huge events. I just came from a tour in Germany. We do thousands of people who want to find out about these things. And so on one of these events, people come to me afterwards, and this one guy spoke to me, and he said, Julian, I've been following you from the first time I heard about Bitcoin. And the story I heard about Bitcoin, I work in a courtroom, and I'm a legal helper. Not very advanced, just a basic legal helper. And in 2015, there was a court case that made me invest into Bitcoin, and I'm so glad this happened. And I said, what happened? He said, there was this really strange court case. There was a husband and a wife, and the wife was going for a divorce. And the husband didn't want a divorce. The wife had cheated on him, and he was this businessman who had made quite a lot of money. And the wife had cheated on him and wanted to leave him. And he said, okay, that's life, like that's it. But the wife wanted to have half his money. And he said, I'm not giving her half the money. I didn't do anything wrong. She cheated on me. She's leaving me. I'm not giving her half the money. And she went and tried to sue him half of the money. So he, quite creative, goes, sells all these assets he has and trades it into Bitcoin. 2015. And now the court case was that the court tried to force the husband to give away the Bitcoins or reveal how many Bitcoins he even had. And he said, I'm not doing it. I'm not revealing it. And the court tried, they did a lot of research, they tried whatever, and this is where the court case was so interesting, they couldn't find the Bitcoin. They couldn't get it. And the legal helper said, he said, Julian, I've been working there 10 years prior and 3 years since that. I've not had one case where a person ever managed to not have to give up their assets in Germany. It didn't matter if it was gold, real estate, stocks, businesses, private equity, the court always got the asset, always. It was the only case in 13 years where the guy didn't have to give up his assets. He had to pay a fine of like 12,000 euros, but he said, that's what made me invest into this. Because I realized I'm in full control of this. I'm in charge, not the bank, not the government, I own this. And so he said, I didn't put all my money into this, but this was really, really powerful. And to me, this puts a small smile on my face because that's exactly what I see. For some people, Bitcoin is nothing else than a pure speculative small thing, and that's absolutely fine. But you know, there's people in Venezuela, people in Syria, people all around the world who as soon as they own a little bit, they put this all into Bitcoin. Not because they want to, but because they have to. It's the only thing that they know cannot be taken away from them. And this is insanely powerful. And this is like whenever you live in a country like Singapore, you don't think about this because we have it really good. And we are the fortunate people who have a credit card, who have a bank account. And we interact mostly with people who have this as well. But as soon as you don't, not being able to be stripped off your belongings is an insane, powerful story. So let's talk about something that maybe many of you have heard. That's ICOs. Who knows about ICOs? Show your hands, I can see. Who has no clue what an ICO is, so just so I know? Okay, great. So let me explain what that is. An ICO stands for an initial coin offering. It sounds similar like an initial public offering, but it's very different in a sense that an initial coin offering is mostly done by a startup. Okay? And the startup creates its own cryptocurrency and sells this cryptocurrency to the masses. We at 10x, we did one of the largest ICOs to date. That was 1.5 years ago, and we received approximately $80 million worth of funding from the public. Now with that obviously comes always a lot of responsibilities and a lot of accountability. I think that's always clear. Our cryptocurrency, for example, is called Pay, P-A-Y. Now here's where it gets shocking. The shocking is we have seen thousands of ICOs all around the world, and Singapore became quite popular for ICOs. One of the reasons was actually 10x, because we had laid the legal framework in how to do ICOs in Singapore. Most of these ICOs, because they're startups and they're so easy to do, are scams. Most ICOs fail. Most ICOs today don't have successful businesses. We are one of the very, 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 very few ICOs where the token, compared to Ether, which was the currency we traded, our token still trades above the value of Ether back then. It's rare. There's maybe a few percent in the entire industry where this is the case. All the currencies are down because they all dropped this year, so everyone lost like 80%. But you cannot compare it to the dollar. The dollar has completely different values. So if you compare it to the index, if you want to call it, we are one of the very, very few coins that's up. And this is shocking. But it explains it. For those of you that invest in startups, having around a 3 to 4% success rate over 3 years is pretty normal. 96% of all startups fail, and this is not different in the blockchain space. So my lesson here is the following. I personally don't invest into ICOs. I would not recommend you investing into ICOs. I think it's highly, highly risky, highly, highly speculative, unless you see this just like any other startup investment that you might be doing. But don't do an ICO if you have never invested into a startup before. I think it's way, way, way too risky, and I think it's quite dangerous to do that. One of the most famous ICOs, and that's something I want to talk about, is the DAO. It's something called a decentralized autonomous organization. The idea behind it is genius. The idea is, if I want to create a fund, why have fund managers? Why have people who create cost? Why not make a smart contract, which is a smart rule book, and this rule book dictates in what this fund is investing in. Quite smart. And you have all the investors vote every month on what are the new investment projects. Very easy. No cost, only the returns. There's no 2 and 20 rule. So it's very, very easy to make money out of this vehicle. And because it's all on the blockchain, no one could steal the money, and it's really, really smart. Well, so the thing is, when this smart contract, which is nothing else than a code, was written and set up, the people setting it up missed a mistake. $150 million were invested into this vehicle, only for an attacker to figure this out a few days later that there was a bug in the code. And he could siphon half of this money out, $75 million, and put it on his own account. Now, this is crazy because it's a hack, but now it gets really crazy. Was this a hack? Did this guy steal? Or did this guy just read the contract? Because in the contract, it was clear. Is a lawyer who reads the contract and knows how to escape a contract, is this a criminal? Or is it just a smart lawyer? And it's the same thing here. Until today, 2 years later, it's not clear if that person is a thief or just smart. He still stole $75 million. Now the point is this. The community is not even sure. And what happened out of this, that back then one of the largest blockchains, Ethereum, completely forked, split in two, because there was such strong disagreement whether this was okay or not okay, that we have today Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. So if you ever go and you look at all these different coins, then the reason why there's two, Ethereum and Ethereum Classic, is because of this hack. It's very, very interesting. So, smart contracts. Smart contracts are automated contracts where if then that happens. And I'll tell you about a few very, very nice things that are happening there. An overview here, for example, is something called security tokens. Security tokens is, instead of, for example, as a startup, offering equity and sell this to the public. At the moment, if I wanted to do this as a company, it's extremely expensive regulatory. If I want to sell parts of real estate to the public, really, really expensive. When security tokens, and Singapore is very progressive in this, allows this, and I think they're going to be one of the first in the world. Liechtenstein is actually the first one, they're going to do it in Q1 2019. Singapore could be the second in the world. This could revolutionize a lot on the stock market, could revolutionize a lot of real estate. Because suddenly, completely new mechanics would come in. For example, what is the next one? Stable, okay. For example, I could have an apartment that's $1 million. And I split it into 1 million little tokens. Each token $1. Now instead of one person getting the rent, I could give the rent to every token holder every second. Because this works on a blockchain, no cost. It's super easy to do. So every second, these token holders would get micro dollars. So I could get my income, let's say I get my salary on the first, and instead of keeping it in dollars, I straight away go and buy these tokens. Because every second, I'm getting rental income. And because there's tools, for example, like the Tokenized card, where you can spend these tokens, I can then just go to Starbucks and spend these tokens. And the future then could be that Starbucks says, listen, I don't actually want the dollars, I want something else, some other asset, or something that they actually want. And because these things get what's called tokenized, the friction between these assets completely drops to zero. If you ever wonder, why can I not sell an Apple stock for an Amazon stock? Why do I always have to sell the Apple stock for dollars to buy the Amazon stock? Well, it's because the market doesn't exist. There's no match, there's no pairing. When you have these security tokens, those matching tokens, this is going to change a lot of things. And currencies that are weak completely lose. The strong currencies completely win. At the end, the true winners is always the same. Competition always weeds out the bad players. And especially in currency, there's very little competition. So I don't think fiat currencies like the dollar will disappear, just the weak ones. And those countries that don't do a good job, they will disappear. They will have real problems. Those countries that do a good job, those great service providers, they will prosper. Same like in the internet. If you're a news channel and you deliver bad news, boring news, no one cares about you, you go out of business because people prefer to watch Netflix and YouTube. And if Netflix and YouTube screw up and their content is crap, it will go away because people have options. And this is exactly the same case. One of the most exciting ones that I'm really, really excited about is something called NFTs, non-fungible tokens or collectibles. And this is something where now this is probably one of the very first things where you're like, whoa, I've not even thought about this stuff. Okay, and this is, now you need to stay with me because this is really, really creative. This is really, really innovative stuff. Think about this way. Let's say you buy a Gucci handbag. And the company says there's only 500 of these Gucci handbags. How do you know? How do you know? Did you count every single one in the store? Did you go to the factory and count every single one? How do you know Gucci doesn't sell 5,000? Oh, there's a tag inside that says it's number 400? Yeah, but maybe there's 10 other people who also have the tag with 400. The odds of those 10 people have a meeting is 0. Well, what could happen is a company could go and say there's 500 handbags, and to make this clear, I'm going to create a token on the blockchain visible to everyone with 500 tokens. And when you buy the handbag, you get it and you have a QR code. You scan this with your phone, and in this moment, you get the token. And everyone can see someone just bought the handbag, and it's your token. Should you collect this handbag, you can prove that you have an original. If someone ever comes and says, no, no, this is the original, you have the token, you can prove that yours is the original. It would counter fakes like incredible. It would make collectibles super, super valuable. This is going to be huge, and it's going to go into a crazier step, and now it gets it crazy. You cannot collect digital stuff today because anything that's digital is not rare, except for on the blockchain. So imagine the following. I can start creating augmented reality things. In this case, a car. But this car could be made by anyone. But because it's on the blockchain, I can make this car rare. And I can say there's only 10 of these really rare Lamborghinis. They don't exist in the physical world. They only exist digitally. For those of you that have ever collected stamps, collected stickers, you understand the value because it's rare. The stamp that's the rarest is the most valuable normally. Suddenly companies can do this in the virtual world. This is innovative. This is something that fits the quote, if you want to know what to invest in, look at kids and look at developers. Kids and developers, this is what they play with. Kids and developers played with Bitcoin in 2011 because they wanted to get into online gaming. Kids and developers played with smart contracts in 2015 when Ethereum came out because you could play around and you could create smart contracts. If you come into the 10x office, you open this app and you play around, all the developers have their yachts and Lamborghinis, obviously virtually, sitting around in the office. Because it's fun to play with these things, and at the moment these things are 10 cents. And for them they're like, maybe this yacht, there's only 8 in the world, maybe this virtual yacht is going to become super valuable. Maybe not. Now, maybe this is completely distant for you. But so was Uber or Grab 10 years ago. 10 years ago, you would have never sent your daughter, your son, into a stranger's car. And today, Grab is the most normal thing here in Singapore. It's always those things that are crazy to think, that stretch someone's horizon, that are going to change the world. I have huge beliefs into this. Maybe, there's already companies who are selling virtual real estate for things. And for those of you that play games, like Fortnite. Fortnite is a free game to play. And for those of you that haven't been following, Fortnite is at the moment the most played game in the world. You know how this game makes money? By selling, literally, useless tools, useless skins. Having these items that you can wear or do don't make you a better player. They don't give you an advantage. It's not like you have a better weapon. You just look cooler. And that's how the entire game makes money. And they make billions with a B, not with an M, with B. It's a free game to play. So if you sit in here and you're like, how stupid is this? Well, I'm not sure of how stupid you found Facebook 10 years ago. Well, guess what? It's one of the wealthiest companies in the world. This might be stupid today. Let's see in 10 years. Again, I don't know if this is the application of blockchain, the application of the internet that I should be betting on. I don't know. But I'm telling you, it could be one of those cases that could really change the world because it doesn't exist outside of the blockchain world. For a sneaker company, for a t-shirt company, for anyone that has collectibles, rare things, I think blockchain is powerful because it could really change a lot of things. Let's talk about some fun things that mishappened. Let's talk about IoTs, Internet of Things. I think many of you have heard of this. Internet of Things is that the fridge and the toaster communicate directly with each other. The toaster says, hey, I just used the toast bread, and the fridge says, crap, I'm out of toast bread. Let's order something on Amazon. Great. And so that's how this is connected, so there's no machine and no computer in the middle anymore. And there's a company in, it doesn't matter, I don't want to call names because this is not the point here. They had a small little test project. And in this test project, they said, you know what? We want to make smart thermometers, or thermostats, smart thermostats. And these thermostats are smart and they're decentralized, so no one, not even the company itself, can control them, only the user. They have their own private key, they can control it. Fantastic idea, everyone thought. How cool as a test case. So they programmed all these thermostats, they all became super smart, and so the user had to actually go there and set the thing for themselves. Well, as always, when you have computers, there's a bug, and an attacker found the bug and programmed those thermostats that every hour, they increased the temperature by 1 degree. So these thermostats started at 21 and went to 22 and 23 and 24. And when they hit like 28, 29, the users started to freak out because they're like, man, it's getting hot in here. So they called the company. They couldn't adjust those anymore. And the company says, well, I'm sorry, there's nothing what we can do. We cannot control the thermostats anymore. They were supposed to be these uber secure thermostats. Only you can control them. And the user said, we can't control them anymore. So the attacker was quite funny and made a Reddit post and said, if you ever want to control your thermostat again, send $10,000 to this address, and I will reset your bank account. So he started to blackmail them. Well, the only thing these people could actually do was take a hammer and destroy the smart thermostat. I think it's always a great lesson, because what happens when your fridge says, well, screw you, I don't like you anymore. From now on, I know you're allergic to peanut butter. Let me order peanut butter for you from now on, because I don't like you anymore. So when these devices become so smart and so independent that you cannot control them anymore, a lot of companies don't consider the risks. And I do, because I'm really kind of aware of these things, and I think these things through until the end, and some companies and some investors don't. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying IoT is bad. I think IoT is great. But combining IoT with AI or combining it with blockchain, I'm not sure if those people have thought the consequences through, right? Because if you have ever watched like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator, Skynet, it's real, right? So this can really happen. So I just kind of want to raise the flag here. And I think in this case, we saw it again, what can happen. Obviously, we then have examples that are fantastic. We see this in Africa in a lot of use cases now. These are still test cases. Switzerland starts and does this with test cases. Switzerland has a lot of elections. Elections, if you think about it, it's one of the most unbalanced activities in the world. You have to elect, but the control and the counting and everything is on the other side. Everything, think about it. You have to trust the other party completely, blindly. Because it has to be anonymous, by definition. It has to be hidden and everything. So that's where all this fake and all this forging and all these claims come from. Blockchain is a prime example. It's anonymous. It's transparent for everyone. Within a second, no one in this world could say, oh, there was cheating going on during elections. And gladly, some countries in Africa are starting to do this. Switzerland is trying this. Now, at the moment, these are all just trials and attempts, and this is always how this should be done. This is fine, like you cannot count on these things. Stuff, as with the thermostat and so on, can go wrong. It's very, very powerful. So, let's skip that for a second. I want to quickly tell you one thing that we are working on, and then finish this up. We work on the cards, I told you this. But what we are really working on, this is the long-term project, and that's a 10-year project, is to create something like the internet, but with a connection of blockchains. Now, the way we see the world is that the internet is a connection of information. Blockchains are trust, so if you can connect this trust, you can run applications on top of it. And you would have something called social media on a blockchain. You would have something called SEO on a blockchain. It's a network that's called Comet. And we work actually together with a lot of universities, also with the University of Vienna. We work together with governments around the world, also with Singapore here with the MAS and their project Ruben. And this is something that I think can be very powerful, especially for those that maybe are in tech companies. Because you should maybe take a look. We want to open source a lot of this. And it could be very interesting to connect, plug in, and kind of be part of this connection of trust in all this. Now, to finish this all off, obviously, when you ever have these hype things, right, you have a lot of fraud, you have a lot of scams, you have a lot of problems. And so the question is always, how can you distinguish those two? There's this famous story from Long Island Iced Tea, and this is a true story. You can read this up. Long Island Iced Tea said, you know what? Let's create some good marketing. Let's change our name from Long Island Iced Tea to Long Blockchain Iced Tea. Well, this sounds ridiculous, but you know what happened? Overnight, their stock price doubled. Just because of the name change. Now, what happened was the SEC didn't find this so funny. They sued the living crap out of them, and then they had massive problems afterwards. But obviously, it asked the question, how do I make sure I don't have a scam versus I have value? And there's a very prominent example for those of you that have been following the press with Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes, who is a completely different business, but this is like a laboratory business. She claimed that with just a drop of blood, she could do the same kind of test than an entire syringe. And what's the interesting thing is not that it got discovered and now she's bankrupt and the company's bankrupt and she's barred from running a company. The interesting thing is the story of Google Invest. Google Invest would have been a prime partner to invest in this. And over $1 billion got invested into Theranos. $1 billion got invested. Not market cap, money that went in. $1 billion. Completely disappeared. Gone. Bankrupt. All the money gone. Google Invest never invested. It would have been a prime candidate to invest. And the question was it just luck? Or is there something to learn from that? And the interesting thing is, Bill Maris, the CEO, said, you know, in a startup, when it's new, You don't have a product. I don't expect you to have a solution. But I expect you over time to come up with something and to stop with the hand waving and actually deliver results. I want to see something. And so whenever we went there, hand waving happened, pointing was happening. They never showed us what was going on. And I think that is such an important lesson here, because I see this in so many blockchain companies. And I see this, and it doesn't surprise me that the market dropped by 80% this year. And I was on CNBC last year around Christmas time, 26th of December, live on CNBC, and they asked me, Julian, what do you expect for the market this year? And I said, and the market back then was flying high. Bitcoin was at $20,000. And I said, I'm going to expect Bitcoin to drop to 5,000, and I'm going to expect Bitcoin to rise to 50,000 again. And they thought I was crazy. They're like, really? You know we're at 20,000, we're in a bull run, everything is flying? I said, I'm positive. Bitcoin dropped close to 5,000. If you notice, so it dropped by like 75%. People got wiped out. I advised everyone in December to sell, to take chips off the table. It's too risky. People were greedy, and they got punished for it. This summer, I went public. I was on TV as well. I said, listen, we have a lot of parameters. We do a lot of research in our company. We look at value, not at price. Price is what you pay. Value is what you get. And our parameters show that at the moment, the market is turning with value. I don't know when the price is going to turn, but our value is turning. I'm not advising anyone to buy cryptocurrencies, but I have. And probably I'm not right. Probably I'm not right. That's okay. But our values, and I'm very, very value-driven, show it. And let's see what's going to happen over the next couple of months and years, right? I would not invest into a Bitcoin. I would not invest into any cryptocurrency if you don't have a 3 to 5 year horizon. And I would not invest more than a couple of % of your net equity. Never more. It's way too risky. But if one of those things works out and you have 100x, 100 multiple, hey, it could be interesting, right? If I could invest into blockchain, I would invest everything I have. But I can't. I have to pick the applications, and that is so difficult. Just like it was in the internet world. And so few people actually made all the money. Now, at the end, there's always a question. The question is, blockchain is great. It makes everyone equal. Who is in charge when no one is supposed to be in charge? What happens if customer service has to come in? And when I ask my mom says, well, Julian, I'll call you if there's problems, but that doesn't work. So who's in charge? And that's actually a really big problem, because the great thing of blockchain, of putting people in charge, is its downside. Because many people don't want to be in charge. They don't want to be in control. And anyone who has ever been in a hotel,
Make sure the coast is clear, then dashes out to leave his room service tray out in the hall, but of course,
and locks himself out naked,
I know the poor guy
knows how bad it is when you make a mistake and you need customer support. You need someone to help you. So the future is just like offline and online. There will be a middle between decentralization and centralization. The trick is to understand what it means, to understand that there is something different. Because I promise you, no matter how secure you think your business is, I don't know if online affected your business, probably, blockchain will affect it as well. In the future, I promise you, you will not go into a Starbucks and the Starbucks says, we sell fair trade coffee from Guatemala. You will take your smartphone or whatever, you have a contact lens that scans this. I have no idea what's going to be in 10 years. And you look at this, and it automatically pops up, and it shows you the entire track history of where this coffee is coming from. And if you want, you can pay, and you can tip the farmer who got your coffee, because blockchain allows that. So if you want, you pay your $5 for the coffee, and at the same time, you can pay 5 cents to the farmer. And you can pay 5 cents there and there and there. You can do the same when you buy shoes or whatever, because supply chains, blockchain will allow that. And these are incredible stories when you think about what this is going to do to social equality. Just like the internet allowed a little kid in the middle of nowhere to create a huge business because online allowed that. Blockchain allows the little kid in the middle of nowhere that no one trusts to create trust in a way that was not possible before. So, such a pleasure. to have been here, to kind of have a chance here. Should you have any questions, then let me know, but I know food is ready, and I know you're hungry, so I'm happy to chat afterwards as well. Good? Thank you.